Hi guys, I'm going to do the review sheet that I sent to you. Please make sure that you guys do it first and then watch my video to make sure that your answers are correct. Okay, so yeah, we're definitely going to have a quiz on this probably Wednesday. Okay, so let's look at number one. I'm going to just get another piece of paper here. So number one is y equals 2 sine of x plus pi over 2 minus 3. And the directions say graph two periods of the following and then state the domain and the range. Okay, so we'll talk about that for a second. So right off the bat, I could tell you that the amplitude is 2. The frequency is 1. So my period is 2 pi over 1, which is just 2 pi. Remember, we always find 1/4 of the period. So in that case, it would be pi over 2. And my starting point is going to be, if I look at this shift, it's just very simple. It's just negative pi over 2. And very nicely, these have the same denominator, so I can make my 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm starting at negative pi over 2, and I'm moving it by pi over 2. So when I add that, I get 0. Then I get pi over 2. Then I get 2 pi over 2 or just pi, either way. If you want to just leave it as 2 over 2, that way you're not confused that this is 3 pi over 2. Okay, and those are your points. We're going to graph it. I feel like there's something on the screen here. Wait, hold on, I want to just wipe this. It just feels like you're missing something there. All right, anyway, I'm going to graph it, but I'm also keeping in mind that it's going to shift down 3 units. So let me put my points first. So I'm going to start with negative pi over 2, 0, pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Now remember I said I wanted you to graph 2 complete periods, so I'm going to need another 2, 3, 4 more points, and we'll get to those in a second. All right, here's my y-axis, actually goes through my 0. I'm shifting it down to negative 3 is my midpoint, and my amp is 2, so I'm going up negative 2, negative 1, which just shows you I should have graphed this a little up more, and then negative 4, negative 5. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in my midline, which happens at negative 3. It's a sine curve, which means I start at the midline. So my first point is at negative pi over 2. I start here. My second point goes to 0 up to 1. And then back to my midline. And then down to. And then here. So here's one complete curve. Now remember I said I wanted 2 complete curves, so let me just finish in. So this would be 4 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2, 7 pi over 2. And let me plot those points. I'm going to go up to the max, then back to the midline, then to the negative amp, and then back to the midline. And there's 2 complete curves. Now, it also asks me for the domain and the range. Well, guys, the domain in all these functions is negative infinity to positive infinity. I mean, you're going off in both directions. The range, though, is the highest point to the lowest point. Well, my lowest point is negative 5, and my highest point is negative 1. Okay, so that's the first graph. The second graph was a cosine curve. So it asked me to graph y equals negative 3 cosine of 2x minus 5 pi plus 3. Okay, so my amp is 3. My frequency is 2, so my period is 2 pi over 2, which is just pi, which means 1/4 of my period is pi over 4. Now to do my starting point, this one I'm going to have to set it equal to 0, because I'd have to factor out that 2. So 2x equals 5 pi, x equals 5 pi over 2, which is where I'm starting. Now I notice that when I move, I'm moving by 1/4. So I'm going to change this to a denominator of 4, just so I can do the math. So this would be 10 pi over 4. So my 5 points is going to start off at 10 pi over 4 and move by 1/4. So then it'd be 11 pi. Oh God, I hate writing that. 12 pi over 4, 13 pi over 4, and 14 pi over 4. Now, I hope you guys saw that this was negative, means it's going to be inverted, and we are shifting it up to 3 units. So, let me draw my x-axis here. Here's my y-axis. All right, and I'm starting at 10 pi over 4. And guys, please, I cannot stress this enough, you need to label your graphs. I just can't have squiggly lines on a graph. This isn't kindergarten. They need to mean something. And I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 more points with that, and we'll deal with those numbers later. So now 1, 2, 3. This is my midline, and I go up 3 and down 3 from there. So then 4, 5, 6 will be my max. 2, 1, and 0 is my negative. So let me draw these points in. First, I'll do my mid. It's a cosine, so normally I would start at the amplitude, but it's negative, so I'm going to start at the negative amplitude, then to the midline, then to the max, back to the midline, and then here. So my graph, remember, it's a curve, so you got to make it like a curve. It's not coming from down here, it's coming from up here. Curve, and it's going to continue going, and I could actually put those points in and then label them after, since my red pen's already out. And there's my 2 complete curves. And of course I'm going to put, remember this goes up, I'm going to put in my numbers. So this is going to be 15 pi over 4, 16 pi over 4, 17 pi over 4, 18 pi over 4. Okay, domain. Again, the domain is always negative infinity to positive infinity. That's like a no-brainer. And the range is simply what is the lowest and highest point. Well, my lowest point is 0. My highest point is 6. It just goes from there to there. Okay, so those are the 2 curves that I asked you to graph. The next is something a little different. I haven't asked you to do this yet. It says write a cosine function having an amp of 6. Well, that's easy. Remember what the formula is. Y equals A. It's either going to be sine or cosine. B, parentheses, X plus or minus C plus or minus D. And here I'm just going to plug everything in. So they want a cosine function with an amp of 6. Y equals 6 cosine. It says that a period of pi over 3, that doesn't help me write this second, a phase shift of negative 2 pi. So I still have to find my B, but I know my phase shift is X. If the phase shift means it's minus 2 pi, so it's plus 2 pi. And a vertical shift of 3 means I'm moving it up 3. So I first have to find my B. Well, I know that the period is equal to 2 pi over B. And they told me my period is pi over 3. So pi over 3 equals 2 pi over B. And now I'll just solve for B. So when I do cross products here, I get B pi, or pi B, equals 6 pi, divide by pi, divide by pi. So B equals 6. And that's the equation. Okay. And the last question here is that Ferris wheel question. Okay. A Ferris wheel has a diameter of 30 meters with a center that is 70 meters above the ground. It makes one complete revolution every 60 seconds, right? Notice how I put sine curve here. I threw a wrench into this because usually we do cosine with the Ferris wheel. So let's see what's going to happen. First of all, here's a Ferris wheel. Diameter of 30. Which the center, which would be 15 and 15, is 17 meters off the ground. So that meant that here, if this is 17 and that's 15, this was 2 meters. Okay, which gave us a minimum of 2, that's the lowest point, with a maximum, okay, if this is 30 and this is 2, this would be 32. Okay, so now what we have to do is we can find, and again, remember we're using the formula from before, so we need to find our D, which is the middle. To find the middle, it's the average, so 32 plus 2 divided by 2, 34 divided by 2 is 17. Okay, so we know the middle is 17. To get to the amplitude, okay, we could do a few things, but I could just basically say, well, what's the difference if I'm at 2 and I want to get to 17? 17 minus 2, 15. So we have our A, we have our D. Now, be careful here. It says it takes one complete revolution every 60 seconds. So the period is 60 seconds. So to find our B, it is 2 pi over B equals 60. So B is equal to pi over 30. Now, this would be fine and dandy if I just wanted to write a cosine curve, because I would start at the negative amp. But I want to make a sine curve, so I'm actually going to shift this over. I'm not starting at 0. I'm going to shift it over 1/4 of the period, which is 60. Okay, so 1/4 of 60 is 15 seconds. So when I put this whole equation together, and that's all they're asking you to do is to write it, it's going to be y equals, now guys, just a quick sketch for a second. It was a Ferris wheel with a negative cosine, right? It goes like that. If I'm moving it over a quarter of the period, it's a positive sign now. So we don't have to worry about the negative. So the amplitude was 15 sine. My B was pi over 30. I shifted it over 15 and I moved it up 17. That is the equation. Okay, so be careful. Usually I ask you for a cosine with that. This one I'm asking you for the sine. And guys, listen, if I asked you for the range of this, the lowest and highest function, the range here, it ranges from 2 to 32. Oh, square, sorry. And of course the domain is negative to positive infinity. Okay guys, I hope you did well with that sheet, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.